Scary. Okay, there's a red dot.
Okay, so you're good.
Hi, everybody. Danielle here.
Oh.
Nice.
6 is what we can do. 7.
It's week 7.
Okay.
All right, Danielle. Do we need to introduce ourselves again? You said
Yeah, we
change
found
the
a
order.
different
Yes.
spot.
We're trying to
Okay.
keep her on her toes.
Okay, I'm Olivia. I'm Michaela. Mariah.
Danielle.
Hannah.
Okay.
Alright. So the videos. That's what we were talking about before.
Crashing is hilarious.
Crashing, yeah.
Crash
I thought I was
glasses.
thinking you were saying like crashing.
Oh.
It is
You're
funny. But it's sad.
Okay.
Okay.
So I mean, we all watched the same thing and we all had the same like prompts.
Yep.
So did anybody have any
right.
like questions or anything that they wanted to go over specifically?
I personally agreed with a lot of the things that he said.
I do too.
Definitely.
I go ahead.
I was just saying, was there anything that anybody disagreed with what he said?
No, but I watched the PSYOP video, like
Same.
the full 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It was
Same.
actually a really good video.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it, and I like watching her teach, and I personally thought that, I was like, wow, it actually connects really well, and that makes sense, and I guess I didn't really understand PSYOP completely, but the way she modeled it, I really got it, and then it made sense with the acquisition and all we know
Oh, yeah.
about acquiring language and learning language, and I was like, this really makes sense, and it's like putting pieces together,
Mhm.
and the video was really cute. I don't know, I liked her and her kids.
Yeah, was that like an academy though? Of some sort? Like I thought I saw them wearing like uniforms.
They might have
And
just
so-
had, they were in Miami or something, so they might have just had uniforms. Like,
Without being like private or something. Because I was just wondering, I'm like,
Don't-
how is that class
Can't
so
some public schools just have uniforms?
uniforms.
I don't know.
I think so. I'm not sure. But it could have been a private school. But
I was just wondering because they were all just so well behaved too.
They
and I'm
were.
like, this is too good to be true.
She probably had really good, like, classroom management anyways. Like, what she did, they did look like they were really well behaved. But that's not the first week. That was definitely not maybe, like, the first month. But,
Yeah.
like, very much into the year, they know what they're doing. They have routines. So the video was really cool because she was able to use the PSYOP strategy throughout the day. And that was, like, it was a video that captured different moments in the day. And it was really, it was just cool because it, like, informed everything of what Crashin was saying, and then I understood PSYOP a little better, so thought that was cool.
For sure. I did have one question something that I found really interesting that he was saying was, like a lot of people believe, what did he say? He said, when you ask people like the best way to learn a new language, they say like, go there. Like,
Right.
Oh,
and he like disagreed with
Yeah.
that, which I found so interesting because most people are like they're like immersion, which I personally agree with just because I have done that. But I agree with him that there's no point in going to a new country to learn a new language if you have no basic knowledge.
You have no basis.
Right.
And I think that's what he was saying,
Yeah.
because you're right, when he said that, I was like, wait, he just contradicted what he was saying.
Yeah.
Because he said something, and then he like went back on it, he's like, nope, like you need to do this, and I was like, wait, what? Like, isn't that the best way? But we talked about this in, I don't remember which class now, but that you need to have a basis, or what was it? It was,
It was ELL.
yeah, it was ELL. Do you remember when she was saying it? Everybody was confused because she's like, no, the best way is not to get immersed in Spanish only.
Yeah.
You need to have English and Spanish basis
Mhm.
can help you in this. So
Yeah.
I think like what you're saying and Crashin said makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. But I was just wondering because there's so many kids who do get thrown into English only, and I was wondering if I don't know what the best way to do it would be because like you don't want to like have them come over here and be like, okay, well you don't speak English, let's throw you in just like an English class to start out with, then they're gonna be behind in all the other subjects. So you do want to throw them in the classroom. I don't know, it's difficult because.
Maybe that contributes to their success.
That's why that he calls it the learning acquisition, right? Because it's the two-part that he mention in it that the learning part wasn't as important to him as the acquisition, so like the acquisition is the interactive, like subconscious thinking about what you have learned through the formal instruction, and so the acquisition part would be a part of like being submerged.
Yeah, because once you start speaking in conversation, then the grammar starts making sense, and you start just doing that naturally, just
Right.
like you do in English. You don't take an English class as a baby and learn
Right.
grammar, you just learn
Right.
it as you go.
Right,
Um,
which that,
So
that's
maybe,
kinda
so he's,
interesting.
what he's saying is that acquisition, it applies to acquisition and not learning, or?
Like, as you acquire the
I mean,
language,
acquisition
you
is a
will,
slow process
Yeah.
though. Like you can't just go to a place for a little
Right.
bit and assume
Yeah.
that you're gonna catch everything.
So what he's saying is that in order to acquire another language, if you go to another country, you have to have that basis already.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're
But
gonna have
how-
to be there for a while.
But how would
Yeah.
you support students that when they come over, they don't have that basis?
That's
Like,
hard.
how do you give them that
You need to-
basis and
yeah.
still keep them, like,
Yeah.
You need to give them like a
Especially
bilingual
if your
classroom or
school,
something.
yeah, like if your school doesn't have those resources, like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
are you supposed to do?
we brought up dual language classrooms in these conversations probably every week, but
Wait.
they
Like,
are
what if you're
the
not in
best
one?
option.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not.
Well, and think about how many languages we have in Washington alone. Like it's we've
Yeah,
got
like,
Vietnamese,
We moved past
Russian.
Spanish, what are we gonna do for
Spanish.
those other students?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I
Yeah.
feel like everyone's like, oh, Spanish all the time. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, great, but what
Yeah.
about these other
Exactly.
100 kids
I
that
mean,
don't
you've never
speak
seen
that?
like a bilingual Vietnamese class, even though that's like the second or first or whatever number one students in like Washington, or it was in
Mhm.
Bellingham. I don't remember. I think it's Washington.
Yeah,
um,
something like
We talked about it instead, I think.
Yeah.
that. So
Well,
we
just
want to
in
make
my-
that one of our money questions.
Yeah, I was already typing it.
Nice.
When
Thank you.
yeah, of course. When just in my like last practicum, in the kindergarten class, there were 4 different bilingual students. They all spoke different languages than each
And
other.
how do you support them? Yeah.
Exactly. Like you're not. I mean, yeah, you can
And how
have.
do you do that with like if you're the teacher and you know Spanish, like how do you equally support each
Yeah,
one
exactly.
if you know the language?
Because you're not
and
going to
know
learn
the
those 4
students?
languages for those
Exactly.
students. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, I could communicate pretty well with a Spanish-speaking student, but Vietnamese or there was
Russian.
a girl from Iran who spoke a language I didn't even know how to pronounce.
Urdu?
No,
No.
it was something random.
That's what one of my kids
Yeah.
who was from there spoke.
Yeah, and it was just very like interesting.
So basically, we're getting at how do we, if knowing what we know about acquisition and learning,
And needing
and how
a-
to be
like
successful.
a basis, like the knowing some basics in order to like
Successfully
successfully
acquire, yeah.
acquire the language.
What do we do as teachers when you
Yeah.
cannot, you physically cannot support that many students on your own without any other additional support? You know, like.
But there's a lot of schools that don't have that, or they
Those
have like
resources.
they have Spanish tutors, or they have
Mhm.
like but they have some students who come in and speak
Mhm.
like Punjabi and they
Yeah,
don't have any of
they're-
that. Like that's hard.
The reason, well, for one, the reason Spanish is being so well adapted to like being able to have like available resources to help them with their transition is that because for one, there's so much more
Yeah.
Right.
coming over here than others. And also, I feel like from like some of the analyses in the book of like different, like, I don't remember what chapter that was, like 2 or something, where they were talking about like their experience coming over. I felt like a lot of the students that weren't Spanish speaking coming over did already know English because their parents wanted them to know it, whereas I feel like some of this, not saying all Spanish speaking families don't know the English language, but I feel like that's more common than like the other languages. I feel like they really try to incorporate English. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's common over, like, if you go overseas to like the European and like Middle Eastern countries, like that is common to learn English, so,
But it's also common to learn the languages of the countries around them.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I think that's also common. Like it's very common in Europe to be trilingual.
yeah.
Like you're
So I
you're
wonder,
bilingual but also learning English, and so you're considered like trilingual. But
And we've talked about like what is it, like the 3+1 before
Mhm.
and stuff like that, which
yeah, which
we
they
all
did in
know.
Indian schools.
Yeah, we all know is,
I just wonder if that's why, like, I guess like American schools haven't been like reaching out like a ton to like other like
Mhm.
families that are coming over with other languages other than Spanish, because Spanish seems to be becoming the majority,
Spanish
obviously.
is the majority. I just looked it up, the top 5 languages just spoken in Washington. And Spanish, there's 61,000, Russian is 4,000, Ukrainian is 2,000, Chinese is 1,000, Korean is 1,000. But, I don't know, I feel like Spanish and Russian are both very high numbers, and yet they're totally different.
But there's no like
Yeah.
focus on
Yeah.
Russian.
No,
Yeah.
there's not.
But I feel like
But there was
they
a
know.
huge population of Russian students in my high school.
Same.
There was
Yeah,
at mine
same
too, but
Or
like
Ukrainian.
I actually had a family. Yeah, my neighbors were
Which is a big
Ukrainian,
difference.
and
Yeah,
they
it is.
didn't teach their students or their kids English. Like,
Yeah.
So it was
They're
very
very
interesting.
much like, you will speak Russian in our home. Like, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't wanna like stereotype, but like,
Right.
the kindergartner that I was telling you guys about, like one of them, she spoke Russian, and I just asked her because I was curious. I was like, "Well, do you speak English at home or Russian at home?" She's like, "Oh, I speak Russian at home." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And then I asked her, I was like, do your parents can they speak English?" And she was like, "Yeah." And then I was like, "Well, who taught you English?" And she's like, "My brother." And I was like, "How old's your brother?" And she's like, 7. I was like,
Oh.
"Okay." And I think it's just because he was learning it in school and coming home and speaking to his sister. But it was interesting because she's like completely fluent by 5 years old, and so I was wondering if she
Yeah.
has to speak Russian at home, where is she learning the language so well? But it was funny because she even said, she was like, "Yeah, if I speak English at home, I have to go outside."
Oh.
She was like, "Even if it's raining."
Oh.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's just because it's so like they want them to speak.
well,
like,
yeah,
keep
I've
their
heard
language.
everyone in my high school was very much like this. We speak this at home. Like I don't speak English at home.
Yeah,
and it's
same.
just
Well, so
very.
are they successful in speaking English?
Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah.
is it because they do have a basis in both? They have their
I
basis in
think
their
I
language.
think that because I don't remember if it was this class or they all blend together. I don't remember what class it was, but when I was talking about how if maybe it was in 310 with Anna
It might have
last quarter, if a student if their family stops speaking their native language, they suffer everywhere. So like I wonder if because their native language is so strongly rooted that
they
it's easier
can be
for them
successful in
to
certain areas, yeah.
Wait, why would it be easier for them?
Because they keep
I don't
their native
remember the
language. I
science
remember what
behind
you're
it,
talking about,
but
though.
I remember we spent like a day talking about how if you take away their native language, you're taking away their sense of like self,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
their sense of the world, and
Yeah.
so if they keep that, then they're able to more easily branch out into English because they already have a basis of
Yeah.
a language set up. Because if you take away like their native language, you're taking away their way to communicate, and so
Well,
they have
especially for
no
students
basis
who
of
don't even know how to
communication.
communicate, like students that come over and they don't know how to even write in their own language, and then you're like, okay, write in English.
Exactly, because then
They don't even know
Yeah.
what that.
Yeah,
you
they
know.
don't even know what that means.
because at least if they could write it in their own language, you could help get it translated,
Yeah.
and then because then you know, okay, write about your favorite color in Russian, and then we'll
And
be
then
able
we'll
to.
code
I wonder if
switch.
that's true, like if it's true that students who are literate in their first language have a better time being literate
Oh,
in English.
it has to be. That could be a really good question though, because I think that has something to do with SPED, CUP,
Oh, I'm not
common-
even writing times down.
common underlying proficiency. We talked about, and it's
Mhm.
it's like a mountain and then another mountain, and they cross. There's like a triangle at the bottom, and the first mountain is L1, the second mountain is L2. And the common underlying proficiency is the little triangle, and where their L1 meets their L2 is in that triangle, and that is what helps them be successful in their L2. And so, but if they don't have, if the mountains don't bridge, there's no, it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
They
there's
can't
like
get
a,
over.
yeah, it's like a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need any more walls. Trump, no walls. What's that?
We gotta write our, this is totally off topic, but we wrote our Spanish essays on like what the world's gonna be like in 6 years. I'm like, well, we'll be tearing down a stupid wall. That's literally what I wrote in my
Yeah,
essay.
I love it.
That is so funny.
So, I think that has to do with like that question is like if you aren't proficient in your first language, it's just you have nothing to work with. You can't be, okay, write a number. Let's say they don't know their numbers. Write a number 8. Well, like,
They don't know what that looks like.
yeah, or even just recognizing 1 through 7, they can't identify it as uno, dos, tres, or whatever it may be, and they can't identify it at all, so that has got to be, something. I don't know, I can think of a theory, I don't know. Good
Okay.
question.
Do we want to move on to chapter 5?
Yes.
Hannah, you're A, right?
I had to talk about developmental psychology and the whole, I guess like the heading of it was focusing on the child obviously, but it only talked about like how they observe the developmental psychology of like early childhood, like that's their main, and then from there that's where it stems from, like how they're developing at that age. But it just I just listed off a few like really interesting things about that. Because they can't like ask a child to say or do something if they're like 18 months and they're just learning like 1 word or 2 words, then they just have to do complete observation and like through like their linguistic output, that's how they see where their brain reacts to things. And so their language obviously begins based upon their like most common interests, and so that's where their first words are. So that's why like mom or dad is their first word, because that's their most interest, because it's their parents. And then it's universally like, or I thought that was, I've heard it before, but I just thought it was just something cool to bring up, just the fact that all children develop in the same way all over the world. And it's not just like, so then I thought that was interesting about how society and like different cultures can't influence the way that we like psychologically develop, I guess. It's just, that's just how it is. And then I already talked about, and even when they are just saying like first word utterances, the child in the brain is making like complex ideas. So even though there's 1 or 2 words coming out, the ideas behind it can be really complex. So I thought that was really interesting. And then as the child continues to develop and become older, that's where they develop their language and sentences become longer and the vocabulary increases to higher levels.
Isn't it crazy though, even with like the sign language, how that like the development
yeah.
of that?
Oh, that was so
That was
cool.
so interesting.
That was so cool.
Yeah, and how it's like so similar, like or like the same as like
Yeah,
spoken
that's
languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, I loved reading that. That was cool about that.
Okay. So, are we just going through which set?
I just did set one.
one.
Yep.
1. Okay. Well, we'll just kind of bring up something interesting from maybe a few of them, and then we can ask each other about them.
Yeah.
I was gonna like jump off something you said because you brought up Mama and Papa.
Yep.
And in my section, I had the natural order hypothesis, and it had some. You said something about it, and it reminded me of this, that that certain, like, we learn certain phonemes first and stuff, and the reason why it's easier to say, like, mom and papa, is because the M and the P phonemes just we acquire them before others, and they're easier to say. And then it, goes on to say that's why you don't call them like rah and Siri, no. And so going off of that, I was just kind of thought that was funny that I always wondered kind of like why. Now it just makes sense because you acquire certain things in certain order, and that goes, and he just said it's like a natural order, and that certain morphemes and phonemes come in the same order for students, and he examined like Chinese and Spanish speaking students, and it came true. It didn't matter what language you were learning. So that goes back to kind of the whole, you have something, what is it, we were saying you aren't just born knowing language, but you have certain like biological ways of like the morphemes and the phonemes coming first. We talked about that before.
I feel like we have.
Yeah. We were like, oh, you aren't born knowing language, but you have certain like grammatical and stuff like that, things that you're born like no
It's
matter
linguistics. is what we were
linguistics.
talking about,
Yeah. So
Like has to do with like Chomsky's
Ye-
idea?
Kind of, yeah, because he believed that they were like born.
Like all languages are like have the same root.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and that kind of blended with that, so I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
So it's just pretty much a combination of like easiest words to say and like their interests. If you
Wonder
were
how
to tie
many-
the two together.
That's what I was thinking,
I
yeah.
wonder how many babies are not trying to say mom. They're just like practicing.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, that's the easiest, like, that's
Like,
the
it's
only
easiest
like,
one.
phoneme they can pronounce.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I know, I wonder if like babies still like, that'd be interesting, like if babies like still go for ma even though they don't
Mhm.
have a ma.
I wonder what other common
That's true.
first things are. Maybe it's something with a P or an M or some other phonemes that are really easy just to pronounce.
I mean, Braden's first word is pizza, but that's a P. So.
Pizza?
Pizza?
Oh yeah.
That's funny.
Pizza.
Yeah. Who knows
Wow.
why? Yeah.
My brother's was this, but it was like this, everything,
This.
this.
Oh.
They're so cute.
I think mine was mom.
I have no idea what
Mine
mine
was,
was.
yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Cool. Anything
Did anybody else want to share from set one?
I mean, mine was just insights gained from linguistics, but I mean, it's something that we're all pretty familiar with. Just talked about Chomsky and the use of acquiring language. And then when like young children make errors in speech, the errors have direct meanings. Like they're not just bumbling around with it. Like they're trying to use the rules that they're acquiring,
Mm-hmm.
but with like irregular words. So that's what mine went over. But
Mine was about Vygotsky and how his theory is related to what was discussed in the chapter. And just basically, children's ability to communicate is affected by their social environment.
Mhm.
And I did the same
It's
thing.
like the overarching
Is it
theme here.
Vygotsky, that's the nature versus nurture, is
Mhm.
that, okay.
Mhm.
That's what I was
Yeah.
like trying to think about when I was reading.
He's all
the
about
section.
social and interaction
Yeah.
and engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized that was from set 3 what I wrote, but from set 1 goes hand in hand with that, and like what like sociologists and anthropologists believed about communications, and back to like what Vygotsky was saying and how it's based on like social interaction and stuff. And so the insights they've kind of come up with is that language is basically contextual to the social environment, and I think we can all understand that. And the example was, you could say like, excuse me, like to get somebody's attention, or you could be like, excuse me, like so I can walk by. And so in different situations they are different, and they've done,
and like different tones too.
That's so interesting because like not native speakers are like don't hear that difference. And
exactly, and so like that's why it's common to people to misuse certain things, and like especially like idioms and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I actually was in Starbucks yesterday doing homework, and I heard a lady teaching another lady speak English, and she like I think she was Chinese. I'm not really sure. I didn't know because I didn't hear any of her like, and I wasn't looking there behind me. And then she only spoke English, but it's very, broken. And she's teaching her, and she's like, that was a da-da-da glottal and bilabial and da-da-da. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she was talking, and she was having difficulties pronouncing things. And what did she say? She said something that we commonly say, like, excuse me, that means like multiple things. I'll have to think of it. But she's like, I don't get what that means. And she had to explain because they meant 2 different things, so.
like ambiguous sentences.
Yeah.
We've been going
Mhm.
over in y'all.
Yeah. But anyways, okay. That was set 1.
Mine set 2 was about social linguistics too, and just like what it is, and it's the field that studies the influence of social and cultural factors on language development. So it's basically repeating what you said.
I remembered, it was fudge.
Oh.
So fudge, she didn't know what fudge was, and she's like, it's chocolate. But what if somebody says, oh, fudge, and she's like, it doesn't mean there's lots of chocolate. It means, and there's 2 different ways. You could say like, you could be like, using it to replace a certain word, or you could be talking about chocolate. And so it was just funny because if somebody were to just be like, oh, fudge, and she had a vocab list and learned fudge is chocolate, where's the chocolate?
Yeah,
Like,
where's the
you know,
fudge?
and so
It was funny.
That is funny. Yeah, I had psycholinguistics for next one. And it was just about like psychological characteristics that have to be present in order for a student to be successful in language learning. And so then I kind of went into like that would influence my work by like being able to see like which students are struggling psychologically like with their second language acquisition and like how like what exactly needs to be addressed instead of just like the student's not getting it.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, so because their English, even when it's very broken, is they're still working with a very like psychologically deep form of English that they're trying to learn. And then as teachers, you're supposed to just know that like their English is different than our English, and like it's probably always going to be different than ours. Just because like everyone's version of the language is so different. But like being okay with that and accepting that like just because what they're saying and what they're hearing is different than you, like doesn't mean that they're not learning successfully. So it was really interesting. It was a really interesting section because I hadn't really thought of it like that, but because I always just thought it was like, well, like if they're not using it in this certain way, then like maybe they're not getting it, but they are. They're just, it works differently in their brains than it does in mine. So it was interesting.
Mine was very different from like all of yours. It was back to crashing.
In set 2?
Yeah, it was.
I keep getting off on sets.
What you talking about?
No, I just mean like I keep reading my set and I'm like, oh, okay,
Oh,
that
yours-
matches up.
Oh, yours is about crashing for set. Oh, that's 2.
Yeah, because
Oh,
we
wow.
did the same
I
one
got confused.
for set 2,
Oh,
but
yeah,
we
yeah.
did the same one for set 4, and I was like, wait, were
What?
you
The
talking?
factors of social and psychological distance.
Yeah, and so I thought you were talking about that, and I was like, oh, I didn't really write about that. But
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So anyway,
But set 2, we talked
crash
in
it.
that.
And
Yeah, I-
wrote nothing.
Oh. I wrote a little bit more than that.
Thank you. It was really cute.
Just a little giggle I've never heard.
That's right. We have like-
I could end that one with snort. Usually happens.
That was really cute. I had to just talk about like the connections between research, practice,
In theory.
and theory. And if I read it correctly, so back me up if you think like, wait, no, you read it wrong. But I found that Krashen, if you research on his things, it couldn't lead to practice. And so like, for an example, like he tried to make a grammar book based off of like putting into practice his theories, but you couldn't because it had so much variation for each child, like because of like researching on a child, like there's just too much variation that you couldn't make one single book on like the best like acquisition learning that they can do, sort of thing. So like if you could have a book that has like endless variation possibilities, then sure, but that would be really hard to cover them all because it's not possible. And then it talks about how you do need to have theories established just because you need to like take from like ways that did really work well and put those into like good effective teaching strategies. And so that's where the theories are good with the second language acquisition.
Yeah, I just, from that, I kind of just said that teachers should use theory to reflect on their practice and evaluate the processes, but you wouldn't do it like in the reverse. Is what
Right.
you were kind of saying.
Yeah, we wouldn't, just
Okay.
put the same thing for each
Good
child.
deal.
Kind of goes along with differentiating or teaching and all that, so.
Yes. Okay, we can move on to set 3, which I already did.
That's ready to be talked about.
Mine was the monitor hypothesis.
Same.
Yeah. So then you can probably talk about it better than me. But basically, if I understood it correctly, it's how like you monitor like what you're saying, like when you're saying it or what you're writing, like so that it's grammatically correct. But like it can sometimes help you, obviously, if you're trying to write like something academic or something. But it also can get in the way if you're of you conveying meaning. So like if you're trying
Especially
to,
in like a second language.
yeah, so like if I was in a Spanish class and trying to write like or do like an oral exam or something, right? And then she asked me a question, but then I'm like over checking myself to make sure I'm doing the right conjugation and the right like verb form and stuff, that I like forget my train of thought, and so then I'm
You're gonna
losing the
struggle
meaning.
more by
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
your monitor
Yeah.
than you would by just like trying to say whatever, you know, without being so worried about being correct.
So it can be beneficial, it can
I
be
feel like that, this is like completely different situation, but like I did mock trial through high school and we like created like these questions would be asked by like the lawyer and then I was like a witness and like we would have pre-created questions or answers to the questions and to get certain points out. That was like the whole point of it, but like I would be so focused on like those exact answers that I would be thinking so much more about that than like what I already just really knew from prior knowledge. So I feel like that's even kind of a way that anyone could experience what it feels like. And it's just like, I was so focused on like answering it like word for word the right way. And I'm like, my teacher or coach for it was like, just think about the question and answer, and then it'll come to you for like the things that you do need to bring out kind of thing. So it's just an interesting complete adjustment, and when you finally get to that point where you can be like, oh, I know this, and you just like bring it out, it's like it just it comes so
And
much
like
more
being aware of
smoothly.
that helps with like your patience towards other students,
Oh,
like
yeah.
especially second language students who are like trying so hard,
Mhm.
and you know they're trying so hard, and so
Right.
like maybe don't correct them on every little wrong thing
Yeah.
they say,
Mhm.
'cause you know what they're saying, and like they'll figure it out eventually.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's just the process
Yeah, it was
of
cool.
practice.
I never really like thought of the internal monitor type thing, and then like after I read it, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
now I like notice it
That's why
all
I
the time.
struggle
Yeah.
with that.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's like, that's why I can't speak in Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that totally would happen.
Well, true, like, even when my mom, she's like, you need to practice your Spanish or you're gonna forget it. So she'll, like, want me to go, like, talk to someone, one of the people at my church who speaks, like, fluent Spanish and, like,
And you're just
native
like,
Spanish. I'm like, I can't remember anything. I don't know how to speak Spanish.
It's
Like,
nerve-wracking.
yeah,
Like,
and,
when
like, I don't know
people
what
are like,
to
oh,
say.
just say something. Just say something.
like,
in
no, I
Spanish.
can't.
So, like, I can't even imagine
I
how
say
those kids
hola.
feel.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in class when they're just in
Yeah.
the all English classroom, like,
That kids
because I
wanna
freak
hear
out
it.
when someone's like, just say something in Spanish. I'm
I've
like,
totally
no.
You're like,
do that.
Yeah. But like,
At least in like our Spanish classes were with other kids trying to learn Spanish. But
Right.
if I was
Yeah.
in like a normal like Spanish speaking
And you were
classroom, I
just
would
trying-
be silent.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be
I
terrified.
would not talk.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to talk. I'd be too scared to talk.
I'd go through that
So,
silence
like,
I'm
phase,
worried I'm
for
gonna mess up
sure.
or say something stupid.
Yeah.
Or say it the wrong way, or conjugate this verb the wrong way,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
like
Oh my
try to
gosh.
talk about the future and start talking in past. Like
That reminds me, my
Subjunctive,
friend tweeted the other day about his Spanish class, and somebody said this. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm going to.
what was this?
So he said, okay, someone in Spanish class, comía caca, and they thought caca meant cake.
Oh no.
They said that in front of everyone in the class, and everyone probably laughed so loud.
I don't know what that means.
That means
Oh.
poop.
Yeah, he was saying, would you eat poop?
Oh
And they thought it was cake.
no. Oh no.
But,
Yeah,
like,
isn't
that's
that-
me.
That's imperfect. So like
Comía.
comia. That's imperfect, right?
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, would you?
Oh yeah,
No,
comida,
it,
yeah, is
it
the-
would be like
would you? Sorry.
it would have been like I used to or something.
I
like
used
that.
to eat.
It would just be I ate poop and you didn't know like how long they were doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
I ate it.
Yeah.
Like, for
And-
how long? How long?
for
did
how
you?
long?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, like as if it was an
No, because
individual
like
thing.
things like that happen. So I
It
just I
does.
like
One
can't
time-
imagine how terrified little like second graders are when they're trying to speak English.
I still remember in 5th grade reading out loud to the class, and I said, The Onion instead of The Union. We were talking about the
Oh
government.
my gosh.
And it was the most embarrassing like to this day, I'm still like petrified
no.
about that day.
I said
because
bra on accident once when I was reading out loud in 7th grade.
You said
and
bra?
I wanted to just crawl under a rock. and
Yeah.
die.
you said bra?
I said bra. I don't remember what I was trying to read, but my teacher corrected me and I was like, I know. I should have said that.
Guys, the worst thing ever was when, you know how you have to do like, what's it called? Current events? And like you have to write who, what, when, where, why and stuff. We had to pick out an article and mine was, I don't even remember what it was called now, but the whole time I was reading about this story about
What's in this?
I'll go on.
You just was so giggly this whole time.
Just always giggling.
Yeah.
Once,
This is like a
once you get her
special
started,
event.
it's not stopping.
I only had like 4 hours of sleep, so
That's
maybe
true.
That's it.
I'm in my crazy like but I said the whole time I was reading about bacon, but it was actually beacon. And nobody told me the entire time. Nobody reacted. But somebody else presented the same article and said beacon.
Oh no.
What's a beacon?
No.
See,
I thought it was like tomato, tomato.
But like,
No.
I still remember that mess up from like 5th grade. I just can't imagine feeling like that every day.
And
What if
English
that-
is-
that
and
happens
English-
for-
Is my native language.
Same.
Comida caca. I'm gonna be like, that is not cake.
Oh, sad.
Yeah, poor kids.
Oh,
Life
yeah.
is hard.
Mhm.
Oh man. Yeah, well, and especially in elementary school, like kids are brutal.
They are.
Like,
Mhm.
like if I would have said bra in elementary school, I would have been like
Never
the
heard
butt
the
of
end of
all
it.
jokes until
Yeah.
I left.
God, I have a
Like,
lot more, but we don't have enough time.
No.
No. And you do like you remember that forever.
Mhm.
So like if those kids
Yeah.
actually like get embarrassed, they're never gonna forget it.
Mhm.
Especially if they're getting embarrassed like that daily.
Mhm.
Like if kids like just make fun of things they say as like for fun, like they're never gonna speak.
Mhm.
I think that's why it related to one of the parts that I read about, like, not, like, I think this is the next one, but it's like the output or
Mhm.
interactionist theory, and like how it's not just input, like not that's just the teacher talking, but it should be them like producing too, but like you don't want to make them like have to produce the language too soon, because that can like cause those like bad experiences and then make them afraid to speak, so.
Yeah, because mine was talking about that. It said that like you can't go past their comprehensible level.
There's
So-
EPD.
The what?
There's EPD.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, because if you try to get them to produce anything that's beyond their current level, then hell's going out of control. Because-
I don't know what's nothing. I'm sorry. I don't know why. It's just like you don't remember in like elementary school when you and your friends could not stop laughing and then you got kicked out of the class.
I went to that class.
I was gonna ask that.
Yourself
You gotta take a walk.
No, just make me laugh more.
You're gonna disturb all those
Gosh,
children out
that used to
there.
happen to me too often. Like it happened to me in high school.
No
Sorry, I
wonder.
didn't
So you were always
that's
that
okay.
kid.
I was. It happens to us. It's
yeah,
my fault.
I know.
In linguistics.
In linguistics,
Yeah.
yeah.
Meredith's always like,
Meredith,
I know.
Hannah,
You
take
okay?
it out.
Share?
What's so funny?
Or she wants to like get in on the joke and then it's just
I
like
know.
it's nothing.
And she knew she was cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
Okay,
mean to
we
interrupt.
are so far down a bunny trail here.
Okay, we should move
Okay.
on.
Anyways.
I don't even know if we can get out.
I mean, we were, I mean,
No, we were.
we weren't too bad. We were talking about
No, we're almost
the
done
fear
with
of,
the sets.
yeah.
We
do
did
this.
we
Let's
do
finish.
5
Let's
or
go.
4 and 5?
We did 5.
It's okay.
3. We're on
It's
4.
passed.
That's what I
The ball is
thought.
passed.
What?
She's like, do you want to finish what you're saying? It's like, no.
Oh.
Ball is passed.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Does
Are
anyone
we-
have
we're
anything
on 4.
important to say from 4? I said mine already.
Wait,
Yeah,
for
I
which
mean,
one?
4, I already said my interactionist versus
Yeah, this one, we had the same one, social
Yeah.
and psychological distance, right? Anyone else have
Oh,
that?
no, we did.
We did, right, so that one was talking about like the influence of like integration, pattern, enclosure, cohesiveness, size, whatever, you know. And it made me think about when I did Compass to Campus, because there was a student who was from a migrant farm working family. And so she'd get pulled out of school and then she'd come back into school. And she was in 5th grade, and it just was so sad because the teacher, like, she knew that she wasn't gonna be here for, like, that she was gonna leave again. And so, and this little girl wasn't, I mean, she like wasn't, literate in Spanish, but she could speak it, and she could barely speak English, like, didn't know. And so she had, like, she'd gone into that, like, silence phase where she didn't wanna talk to anybody. And, so I was trying to work with her, because all the teacher would do is would hand her an iPad to work on like English grammar games, like all day long. And she would watch, she just would sit there and she was supposed to work on her iPad. She'd watch the rest of the class go about their day, and she wasn't included in it. And like,
Yeah,
That's so sad.
yeah, and so like when I was reading this part of the book, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what she was dealing with. Like there was that huge social gap between her and her peers, because she wasn't allowed to, or even given the chance to try and integrate herself with them. And so it just was,
And it's not her job to put herself in that
Yeah.
place.
No.
Like the teacher would be the one that
Exactly.
has to.
And
it's
it
like,
just-
how would you communicate with the teacher?
yeah,
as a
so
little
this teacher
child?
was like completely just letting her slip under the rug and like with no care in the
That's
world
so
about like
sad.
what it was. Yeah, and then she did end up leaving again. Her family was moving, but it's just like that she's gonna be put back into school and
There was
it's
so much
just gonna
like
repeat
time that could
itself.
have been used
Uh-huh.
more wisely.
Efficiently and
efficiently.
everything, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Definitely.
And I feel like, I mean, I have no idea because I've never been a teacher, but I feel like teachers prioritize their time with like, okay, what am I gonna do to like be most effective to those that I know that will actually like, I'll see a result sort of thing, and I feel like they kind of become lazy, or can become lazy.
Yeah.
With the rest that they're like, oh, they're just gonna move, and I know they are, so what's the point?
Yeah, well, I've had teachers tell me you can't reach them all, and I was like, yeah, but you're
Yeah.
sure gonna try,
You can
aren't you?
try.
Yeah, that's your
Yeah.
job to
And-
try it your best.
I mean, I
Yeah.
know, like you said, I'm not a teacher, I'm not in that place, but like,
Right.
going into it, you need to have the set, like,
The
I am
mindset,
not gonna
yeah.
stop
Yeah.
until, like, you can't.
No,
Yeah.
that's
But like you do have to know realistically that obviously you won't catch every
Yes,
student.
yeah.
But like
Like you
that
can't go home and
shouldn't-
cry
that
about
shouldn't
it.
hinder
No,
I mean,
yourself.
You
but-
will.
yeah, definitely.
But I mean, yeah, like Olivia said, you have to be realistic about it, but you also can't be like,
too realistic as to
Pessimistic
where you're just
about
like,
it.
well, you know,
That's
yeah.
it, can't reach them all.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and so they.
Yeah.
Because then you're gonna reach even less students
Mhm.
than you could.
Definitely.
Oh, this job is gonna be hard.
I know.
Every time we talk about it, I'm like,
I know.
Top 5
So
hardest
Right.
jobs ever.
In set 5, Michaela and I were talking about whether grammar improves students' ability to acquire a new language. And I don't know if I would say it improves their ability to acquire a new, I mean, it does, because we said that when they have like a basic understanding of the language, then they're more easily able to acquire it. But I don't think you necessarily have to have like all the knowledge about the grammar in order to acquire the
It's more
language.
the meaning.
Or like the meaning, yeah, and being able to like converse in it, like a little bit. But I definitely think it helps with the success of like learning the language, which is different than acquiring it. So, because once you acquire a language and you start learning the actual like grammar rules, then you're able to like write essays or converse in a more like appropriate way or like in a more professional way. Because like definitely we've talked before about different ways of communicating, like how you talk to a friend versus a principal or to the president, you know, in very different ways. So like, I mean, I know I could talk Spanish with like my Spanish speaking friends, but I can't talk Spanish to like this, like a Spanish like official or like,
I see, because
You
they
know.
still have those differentiated
Right.
ways you talk to
I don't
people.
have that vocabulary.
You don't
or
know that
the-
yet, yeah.
that structure. I mean, you even learn in the beginning, like the verbs, the difference between like to or sue, like. Mhm.
Do you think like all languages have like that difference, like, or do you think?
I think Spanish is more pronounced.
Mhm.
Because like in English, we don't have like a separate tense or like a separate conjugation for
Yeah.
like
It's just
formal?
more like formal and
Use-
informal, it'd be like, hey dude, to your
you use
professor.
academic words
Yeah.
and like stuff.
So maybe your question is,
So would it be more like just languages that like value school
that
like
value
as a
that
whole?
separation, yeah.
I don't know, like,
Well,
cause
That's a
they're,
good question.
well, yeah, and also,
Is there like a formality in most
or like
languages?
a correlation between those that are languages that do have like a school system, I guess, and those that,
Mhm.
and then, or a school system versus,
Or those
being
that
out of that
don't
school
value.
system. If
Mhm.
they don't have that school system, then,
Okay, what is the question? I'm hearing two.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
like, I'm trying to word it.
okay, are you
Are you
asking?
asking about the difference between formal and informal languages?
Yeah, like to have formal or informal, does that mean that the society has like a school system versus being out of the school system, you know?
Or like values the use of education or like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, are there, I don't know if there, I mean, I'm sure they're, like, the language that on the Amazon, like, they probably, but theirs is so simple that it's like, well,
Are you
yeah.
saying
But I
like,
wonder, do they even still like, because then, I mean,
Or is there a formal and informal because of like, I don't know, like the hierarchy
like-
of their tribe?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if it's only because of like school that makes it formal or informal.
Is there a direct
Yeah.
correlation between the formalities of language
Yeah.
based on school?
That was beautifully said.
okay, say that one.
Is there a direct correlation in the formalities of language, like informal versus formal, due to the presence of an active school system? Or
An active school system?
do most languages have a formal and informal just based off of social hierarchies? I do. Is that what you're asking?
Definitely.
Okay, so just sorry, repeat that all one more time. So is there a direct correlation between like informal and formal languages to whether there is a school system?
To
There-
like
there's
is
an
there a
active-
direct correlation with an active school system? Or are
Or is it-
formal and informal languages just based off of social hierarchies?
Okay.
What time are we at?
45.
Oh.
Should just do the last.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is about the sign language, which is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that part.
It was really
so much. That set was so cool. It was just.
Just how they're like,
Did you know?
there's not, even like thinking about how there's not even a single like sign language used by all people, because like you think,
ASL.
I did not know. I
Yeah.
had no idea about sight, or I didn't.
I
You
wonder-
didn't, like, you didn't know there wasn't a universal sign language, or?
I thought
No,
it was universal.
I thought
I thought it was
Universal?
universal too.
Uh-huh.
Until
Yeah.
this article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just knew
Huh.
it was called American Sign Language, so I just assumed.
Oh
But
yeah.
And
I
then-
thought like
and then I-
America's like. over
Yeah.
everybody.
Well, I'd be wondering. I wonder how.
Ethnocentric.
Yeah.
Ethnocentric.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wondering-
so-
Sorry, Hannah, that's not what I mean that weirdly. That's just a very typical mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah, I
wonder
know,
how
it's
similar other language
I mean, it's
sign
kind of what
languages
we're
are.
taught.
It is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not
and
just
most
me
of the time when
making
you
my
hear
own
sign
idea.
language, they don't refer to it as like, oh, she speaks American Sign Language. You're like, oh,
No.
she speaks sign language.
Yeah. Not until high school did I start to hear the
Yeah.
ESL.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yeah, because if you go to like Mexico, like their sign language is completely different. Like people who speak sign language won't understand.
That's crazy.
Do you think that it's like
so cool.
similar, or could they just be completely different? I mean,
I
how would you
have no
translate
idea.
one sign language to another? I mean, I assume it's to one spoken language to another. It's the same.
Yeah.
But like to me, my mind, I just can't wrap my mind
But
around
that means
it.
that like signs are different,
Mine's
right?
All the
just-
signs are
yeah.
different, and then there's also a different like grammatical like formation of like
Oh,
the
just the
sentences.
same as the
Mhm.
language.
It's the same as
Yeah.
the language. Because like my sister, she's learning sign language right now. She's telling me like you say like your favorite color what? Like that's how you say what is your favorite color.
Mm.
Like you say like
Oh,
you say,
wait,
like,
in
favorite-
Americans?
in American Sign Language you say like
Oh, so it's
You
not
think
the
it'd be
same as
grammatical
the.
structure.
no, it's not the same as English.
Because they don't yeah.
Because they don't translate the same.
Oh wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I was
You
thinking
say-
it was
yeah,
just
you
like
say-
the same as like Spanish sign language
You-
would
yeah,
be
you just say, like,
in that
yeah,
out of order.
That's what she said. She said your favorite color what, or your favorite like when you want to know your favorite something like what, which is like this, is like the last word you use in the sentence.
That's interesting.
Cool.
Is that everything?
Oh.
You're
done.
You're done here, folks.
I mean, I think
Well-
we're set.
I'm good.
Did we,
Did
we had 3 questions, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, we do?
Any other questions or pressing orders that we have?
Oh.
Nope.
And
We're good to go?
Good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you guys about.
Okay, bye.